Alright, so I'm assuming you've already seen the title of this video. You haven't just clicked on it just out of randomness. So this is the symbolism of the Infinity Stones, or more of why the Infinity Stones have a little bit more of a purpose than what's shown in the film itself. So I've got a microphone on the side of these headphones. I keep falling down. It's really winding me up. Anyway, so the Infinity Stones, actually what they resemble and the powers that they have are a bit, well, as I've looked into them, seem to be a bit more symbolic in terms of how we should live as people, how to utilise skills and things for ourselves to actually act and be able to do things in a more powerful way. So if you've seen the video that I did last time, the idea of God, where I speak about how I believe God is more of a consciousness and how we should live and how we can tap into this consciousness and things like that. If you look at the video, you understand what I mean. It's kind of on the backhand of that, but tying in things that I've seen throughout the MCU about the Infinity Stones. So let's start with the Time Stone. So obviously if you've seen the Time Stone, then you know the power of this stone to do with being able to see into the future, being able to see into the past, being able to regenerate things by reversing the time on the object or even aging it by and decay. So this Time Stone, its symbolism could be patience. So to be able to gain things in life, to be able to be better humans, we have to understand this, the patience of things. We have to be able to understand that we need to wait, and for things to manifest in our lives, we need to be patient for it. I mean, things grow with time, but in the same way, things develop, things decay. So it's the Time Stone really is about understanding this duality of growth and being patient in growth and also decay. Being able to utilise this, it's more of a mastery than actually learning a power. It's more of understanding the effectiveness of being able to be patient, to wait for things, to watch it grow, and also be able to watch things, let's say, fall apart or deconstruct to be able to be reconstructed in a new way. Also, the Time Stone said that with it being when it's utilised to its full power, it allows the user to have omniscience, which is being able to, I think it's knowing everything. I'm pretty sure it's being able to see everything. Which obviously, if you can see the past, present and future all at the same time, you pretty much can see everything. And omniscience is actually said to be one of the powers of God, which is quite interesting. Is it symbolism, is a suggestion that if we can utilise patience, if we can understand that we need to wait for things and things will come in their time, that we can actually begin to manipulate the idea of time and kind of harness it, let's say. As I say, it's more of mastery of understanding time, how we can use time in our favour to watch things grow as well as to let things decay. The first time we saw this, the Time Stone kind of utilised to a good degree was in Doctor Strange, where he utilises the stone to create a loop to stop Dormammu. He demonstrates his patience when he traps Dormammu in the time loop and plays through it. I'm not too sure how many times he played through that scenario, but from what we could see, it was a quick snippet of a lot of times. It was something that Dormammu couldn't do. He couldn't actually get with the patience. He couldn't be patient to allow it to stop, and it was supposed to be an infinite time loop, but it was something that Dormammu couldn't break out of. Which allowed Strange to have that kind of advantage over him, because that was the skill that he managed to master. He learnt how to heal things, because he tries to reverse things. We've seen him prepare and take control of information he has learnt in Infinity War, when he sees how many possibilities that they could have won in. But it's also knowing this information, you have to be able to understand it and learn from it as well. I think time also, I think in terms for us, I think it's also learning from our history as well, because linking it to things overall for time, it's not just about manipulating time, it's to do with being able to make sure history doesn't repeat itself, and understanding our history, because that's time, and also understanding where we want to go in the future and where we're aiming towards. But we've seen the stone used for good as well as bad. So I think the point of it is to understand the duality of good and evil within the utilisation of the stone, and what it means for us as human beings, which is that we need to take into consideration the time of things. So the next stone that I'm going to talk about is the Mind Stone. The Mind Stone is more symbolises the universal consciousness. Again, if you've seen the last video where I was talking about that, then you might want to watch or listen to that one, so you can understand what my ideas on the universal consciousness. So essentially what it would mean is that we'd have to establish a link with this consciousness to gain information to learn. It's possible that this consciousness that's symbolised by the stone is the same thing that the Buddha taps into when he becomes enlightened. This grand universal consciousness that gives us ideas and gives us thoughts and helps us tap into dreams and things, and helps us gain some magnificent ideas that maybe some incredible people in our past have been able to tap into. The stone itself allows the user to see into people's minds and their thoughts and dreams and manipulate them. Possibly the symbolism of the stone is that if we are able to understand this consciousness and tap into it, we can manipulate the kind of thoughts and energy of the consciousness itself to be able to use this two-way relationship. So not only can the consciousness manipulate us in terms of giving us information, we can also input into the consciousness as well and understanding this. So firstly, we've got the time stone, which allows us to learn things over time, and obviously put the time in, understand our history. But the Mind Stone allows us to interact with others as well. We see the utilisation of this stone in Age of Ultron, where Ultron, when he's first created from the schematics of the Mind Stone, Ultron's able to search and learn through all of the information. We see him searching through all of it. But the interesting thing is how the Avengers agree to stop him, because they are very divided on the idea of whether they should be creating Vision at that point, and it's Thor that comes in, this otherworldly being that manages to direct the ideals of where everyone's going. So they all unify themselves, and the unity of their consciousness against this being that is unified only by itself. This is how the Avengers beat him. So in the first Time Stone, Doctor Strange beats it by understanding time better than the being that he was trying to defeat. In this one, they are using the same, without even knowing it, they're doing the same thing to defeat him. So they are using their minds, their utility of their consciousness to overpower that of Ultron. The creation of Vision is also important as well, because we see how balanced he is in Thor, and how pure of mind he is, because he understands both Ultron and the Avengers, but to keep the balance, Vision assists them in unifying the thoughts and feelings of all the Avengers. It's also interesting because Vision can also lift Mjolnir, which means that he must be worthy to be able to pick it up. So it's I'll do that in another video on what it means to be worthy. Is this something to do with the balance of the mind and being able to understand both the good and the evil from the consciousness that they tap into? The next stone is the Soul Stone. So the Soul Stone is quite interesting because it introduces the idea of sacrifice. So the law of sacrifice suggests that if we give something up of value now, we can gain something much more valuable in the future. It's the same way we kind of put money into a savings account for later, because it attracts interest, which grows and allows us to have more money in the future because we sacrificed it now. It's the same thing that Thanos does in the film by killing Gamora, because the only way he can get the Soul Stone to manipulate other souls is by sacrificing something. So understanding that sacrifice is to better tomorrow is key. because the soul stone allows us to control other souls in the universe. It's also represented by Jesus' crucifixion, his sacrifice to save many, and also God's sacrifice to save his own son. So from what we're getting from this now is that the message behind this one is that you have to be able to gain this power, the utility of these skills. You have to be able to sacrifice things to be able to gain them in the future. So firstly, again, just reiterating over the ideas, it's time. You've got to be able to be patient. You've got to be able to see things grow as well as decay and understand the duality of them. The mind stone, you've got to be able to tap into this consciousness. You've got to be able to understand things, people's minds, thoughts, dreams, and understand the duality of them again, because you've got to understand where people come from when they have these evil thoughts, and understanding the evil, but as well understanding the good. And then the soul stone is being sacrificed, being able to sacrifice things to be able to better yourself as well. The best demonstration, I think, because there isn't really a solo film that shows off the soul stone like the other films. Thanos makes the ultimate sacrifice to do what he believes is right. Because after all, he is the hero of his own story, and he murders his daughter as a sacrifice to the stone. But the interesting thing is who does he sacrifice her to? So what is the sacrifice for? What power is governing the stone that accepts the offering of Thanos killing his own daughter? Is it the soul stone itself that accepts the sacrifice, or is it perhaps a demonstration of the universal law that's put in place that sacrifices are needed to grow to places we need to be? We can't have all of the value. We have to sacrifice things to be able to gain better and more. So he was able to fulfill this. As Gamora was something that he deeply valued. So the next stone is the space stone. So the space stone symbolises, I think, movement, growth, pathways and journeys. You've got to be able to understand the relationship between space of objects. The space stone also touches on the idea of the law of attraction, that if you think positively, you can bring things to you. You can decrease the space between your ideals, your goals, and where you are now. The power of the stone is said to be able to grant the user omnipresence, which is, I think, means being everywhere at once, so constantly being in contact with something. So using the space stone allows you to be everywhere at once, essentially. And the first time we see the space stone utilised is in its tesseract form, which, ironically, if you didn't know, is the name of a four-dimensional object, which is quite interesting when you think that space, in terms of dimensions, having a four-dimensional object is pretty interesting. And they also tried to harness power from the Space Stone, the Tesseract, in the Avengers, the first Avengers, Avengers Assemble, I think it's called. And they say the cube is a doorway into space, and the doorway can be opened through both sides. So it allows travel through dimensions as well. And the message here is similar to that of kind of astral projection, it seems. You may learn how to utilise this power of moving through space, through these kind of projections, but you'd have to remember that the door is open both sides. So once you open this gateway into other dimensions, you're allowing something to come back through it as well. So that's quite interesting as well. So in terms of putting a message to what it means to us, perhaps it means that we have to understand our space and understand that how it affects things when we move things, and the relationship between, although we've made a movement our side, it may mean that there's movement on the other side as well. Just like how we've tapped into the consciousness with our mind stone, we've been patient with and understanding with the time. The soul stone is a sacrifice. The space stone is this connection between all of them and understanding the space that is opened on both sides. So the next stone then is the reality stone, which symbolises getting to know what is around you. Good perception's everything. You have to have a good idea of what reality is, as things are not what they seem. When you understand that reality can be changed just by understanding that you have the power to do so, it's interesting to see where that power comes from. You have to have like this full conviction to be able to, to believe that there's that you're able to do things, and you've got to be able to compel them into existence. I think the first time we see the reality stone is in its ether form when it infects Jane Foster in Thor: The Dark World, but we don't really see how it affects reality until we see Thanos using it in Infinity War, which changes the perception of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and changes the form of objects and people in that scene. It was in Thor: The Dark World. It was acting as symbiotic. It was seeking a host so it could protect itself. So that itself is different to the other stones, because the other stones are usually in a stone or gem form, whereas the aether was in kind of liquid, kind of gaseous liquid form. It kind of suggests that to be able to manipulate reality, it takes a lot of force and power. The fact that maybe we need to understand that nothing is impossible, and we can't be surprised or baffled when it doesn't make sense, because it's kind of how Doctor Strange would probably be one of the best people to kind of combat the reality stone, because he's used things like the mirror dimension. He's been into different dimensions when the Ancient One showed him all of the different realms and things. Thor as well. Thor knows about the different realms, the 9 realms. So this manipulation of reality to someone, say like Iron Man or Captain America, it might be a bit more confusing because they don't understand these different dimensions and things like that. So the reality stone basically suggests that we can manipulate our own reality, and that we shouldn't really be so hard set on what we've been told the world should be like. We should be a bit more open-minded to be able to understand that reality can be changed. Then the next stone is the Power Stone. So the Power Stone represents kind of being and its manipulation of energy, because we are made of energy, and hence that we have the power to manipulate it. The art of understanding this stone is about knowing how to manipulate and control our own energies to be able to manipulate other energy. It's said that when we use this stone to its full power, it allows omnipotence, if I can pronounce that word properly, which is basically being all-powerful, and basically we can really do anything. But obviously, as Spider-Man's Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility, and it's about being able to harness this power, because it's utilised by Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy. When they had to stick together and they all held hands and let the power flow through them to help them survive it, and they manipulated the energy and shared it between themselves to kind of stabilise the Infinity Stone's power, and this kind of when it's all about sticking together, really, because that's what I've noticed as well. Is the power stone, they stick together. It allows them to beat it. Which other one was it? The Mind Stone. They all unify their thoughts to be able to overcome Ultron's kind of power of the Mind Stone. The Reality Stone. The Reality Stone's really the only one where they don't actually come together. I mean, the Space Stone is quite interesting as well, because for them to be able to, it kind of suggests in each one how they will beat him. Because the Mind Stone, they all have to unify on the same thought. For the Time Stone, they all have to be patient, and because I think Endgame's going to be set a couple of years after, so they have to be patient and be able to, research their past. Well, it's going to be a lot of time travel anyway. That's what's suggested anyway. Spoilers. But the Mind Stone, they all come together. The Soul Stone, they have to learn about sacrifice. So perhaps that's where the sacrifice comes into play. So perhaps one of the main characters has to sacrifice themselves to be able to get what they want. So it's like they have to reverse the story. So Thanos has made all of these. He's been patient to be able to get the stones. He's had I think it's the Black Order, to be able to all have a unified thought. He's been quite convicted on, he's had a good conviction on what he believes he wants to do, so he's been quite 100% on his ideas and tapping into his consciousness to be able to direct it where he wants to go. The Soul Stone, he's sacrificed Gamora. The Space Stone, he's gone where he needs to go. He's not kind of restricted himself to one space. He's gone where he needs to go and he's journeyed across the universe to be able to find these stones. He's pictured another reality. He's fought for this reality, and he's also had the power to do it. He's a strong individual. So he's been able to do this. So the Avengers are going to need to utilize these things as well. But perhaps although the story requires the Avengers to do that, maybe it's more of a message towards us people that this is things that we need to do. So we need to be patient. We need to unify our minds and, all want the same thing. We need to be able to give up things and sacrifice things to be able to get these things. We have to be able to use our space and travel and learn about these different places and different things. We have to be able to see reality in a new way, to be able to bring new things into it. And the Power Stone, we have to be able to understand our own powers and understand our own limits as well. As after all, we all are just vessels of energy. But there's one thing that's actually involved in this that's never actually spoken about as being as powerful, and it's quite interesting to see that it's not actually spoke about. Well, it is, but not as vitally as the Infinity Stones, and that's the Gauntlet itself. Now, the Gauntlet itself doesn't seem to be that anything important, even though it is, because it's interesting how the stones can't be utilised outside of the Infinity Stone. They kind of need a vessel. It requires a tool to be able to combine them and for them to work together and unify. But what does the Gauntlet represent, as the stones do? And perhaps it's our own bodies. Our own bodies are our vessels for our energy. So perhaps it symbolises that our body's a vessel to our souls and our energy and our consciousness. The same way the Mind Stone is our consciousness, the Power Stone is our energy, the Soul Stone is our soul. And then it's just our perception is the reality. Our eyes, how we see things. And then we've got the Time Stone, our patience, our growth, our decay. And the Space Stone as well, being able to present ourselves in more ways than one, in more dimensions than one. It's not just one plain way of being. There's multiple ways of mind, soul, feelings, thoughts, emotion. It's not just being robotic, really. And the stone's ideals fit within us. If we can be bothered to utilise them. Time to heal and reflect and to think and to learn, and the Mind Stone to understand, to learn and to search and invent, to expand and to dream, and the Soul Stone to empathise, to sacrifice, to prepare, to build, the space to grow, to move, to attract, to gather, the Reality Stone to change it, to shape reality, to learn from reality and understand it and to be the reality, and the Power Stone to understand our own power, to respect our own power, to control it and to be it. So I think there's a lot of messages that come out of the Infinity Stones and their kind of meaning and what they kind of symbolise for us, as well as for the storyline of the Avengers and what they'll need to do to be able to overcome it. And perhaps, yes, it is just symbolism for the storyline, and this is a representation of what they need to do to be able to overcome it, but maybe it's also for us to learn as well, and to suggest that he does become godlike, he does become very powerful, and maybe it's a message to us as well that if we want to become powerful, and so we don't lose like how we know Thanos will, because the Avengers are going to come and kick his ass. We have to understand that we have to balance these things in our own lives to be able to be as powerful as that. And if we want to be a powerful being, then we have to understand time, our minds, our souls, the space, reality, power, and understand the tool that brings them all together, which is our own bodies. And I think understanding that the Gauntlet is this vessel, and how the powers moved and utilised. It's the same thing like a Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange, how they move their bodies when they, especially their hands and their fingers, when they are doing spells or magic. There's very unique ways to how they move themselves, and it's quite interesting how the hand movements are quite symbolic in the MCU for their demonstration. So, just to reiterate, the message that perhaps the stones provide for us, so the time stone being patience, and just patience. I'd say simply, time is for patience. The mind stone to tap into this universal consciousness, and be empathetic with other people, be able to join with other people for a common goal. The soul stone to be able to sacrifice, to be able to grow your own soul. The space stone to be able to be in more places than one, be multi-dimensional, not just one-dimensional and just, you're either happy or sad. There's more to us understanding the space of what we actually are. The reality stone, our perception, being able to change our reality by changing our perception and how we see things. If you only see one way, your reality is only going to be one way. If you can expand your perception, if you can see things another way, you will expand your reality in the way you can interact with the world. And the power is just understanding yourself, really. And the power is usually people think is more intricate than it actually is, and it's not. It's just understanding who you are, the power that you actually already have, the power that you can have, and also respecting it as well, respecting that you do have this power and there is a responsible notion for it. And yes, these things can be used negatively, and I think the message is suggesting that it will always circle back on you if you use it negatively, the same way Thanos seems to have achieved what he wanted, but we all know it's going to circle back on him. And I think these guys who are convicted, the Avengers who are convicted into what they want and what they need to protect, they are going to get what they need. So yeah, that's been my interpretation of the Infinity Stones and how they actually have more symbolism outside of the film, along with what they represent within the film themselves. So if you have any ideas on how any of the Infinity Stones actually symbolise more for us and what they actually suggest, built on what I've already said, or if you think there's something else about them that's quite symbolic to the way we should live our lives, just comment it on the video, comment your understanding, comment how any of it seems symbolic to you, whether that's the Infinity Stones, Thanos himself and his understanding of the world, or even the Avengers, and if you think some of the Avengers actually harness some of the ideals of the stones themselves. Yeah, that's been my video, so bye bye.